When we talk about artificial intelligence, it feels like the conversation always splits. In Silicon Valley, it's all about code, venture capital, and the next big thing. Governments? They're mostly talking about risk. But there's a third conversation going on, and it might just be the most important one. China isn't talking about AI as a product. They're talking about it as national infrastructure. And trust me, that one little shift in perspective, well, it changes absolutely everything. Let's break down exactly what that means.
And boom! This slide just lays out that huge divide perfectly. On one side, you've got the model we all know, Silicon Valley. It's driven by companies, it's fueled by VC money, and the goal is to create products. But on the other side, China's playing a completely different game. They see AI as a national system, a foundational layer, like the electrical grid or the highway system that gets integrated into the very fabric of the country.
So, let's dive into this first big idea, this concept of AI as national architecture. This is all about getting past the idea of just building cool apps and instead thinking about how you build an entire countrywide system.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? It means you stop treating AI like a product to be sold and start treating it like a utility to be deployed. It's about strategically weaving AI into the most critical functions of a nation. We're talking how goods get moved, how money flows, how entire cities are managed, and, yeah, even how the military plans its operations. While companies in the West are racing against each other, in China this is a coordinated top-down national project.
Okay, this is where that abstract idea gets really concrete. We are talking about so much more than just the latest chatbot or image generator. This is AI powering traffic grids that optimize a whole city's flow in real time. It's massive public security platforms. It's national credit scoring systems. It's a national strategy to completely dominate industrial robotics and, this one's huge, semiconductors. See, the goal isn't just to innovate, it's total, deep integration.
So a vision this massive needs a seriously powerful engine to make it all happen. What are the key strategic assets that are actually driving this national architecture forward?
It really boils down to these three massive pillars of power. First, something called data density, and they have an incredible advantage there. Second, a relentless, almost obsessive drive for what's called hardware sovereignty, basically controlling their own chip supply. And third, a super long-term strategy to build a deep pipeline of talent. Let's dig into each of these.
Right. So here's the key thing to understand. In the AI era, scale isn't just about how many people you have, it's about data density. Think of it like this. Every single time someone in China uses an app like WeChat to pay for coffee, hail a ride, message a friend, whatever, it creates a tiny little data point. Now multiply that by over 1 billion people doing it constantly in one integrated system, you get this incredibly dense, nonstop river of digital patterns. And AI systems, they live and breathe patterns. China's ecosystem just produces them at a scale that is hard to even comprehend.
Now let's move to that next pillar, and you'll see how this all connects. This quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it. The competition has moved way beyond who can write the best algorithm. It's now about the physical silicon chips that run everything. You've seen the US put export controls in place to try and slow China down, but honestly, that's just lit a fire under their push for their own domestic chip development. This isn't a tech race anymore, it's straight up silicon geopolitics.
And the final piece of this engine is the people. China graduates a staggering number of engineers and STEM students every single year, and the state has made AI education a massive strategic priority. This isn't about who builds the coolest model this year. It's about who can train the deepest bench of experts over the next 2 decades. For China, building talent isn't just a nice-to-have. It is a deliberate, long-term national policy.
Okay, so we've looked at the vision and the engine behind it. Now let's talk about the impact. What are the real-world consequences of this approach, both inside China and for the rest of the world?
One of the most contentious issues, for sure, is how this tech is used for public security. And as you can see, there are 2 completely different ways to look at it. Supporters will tell you these systems, using things like facial recognition and predictive analytics, are incredible tools for creating stability and preventing crime. But the critics? They argue these are really tools for expanding state oversight and ultimately control.
This statement just perfectly nails the tension here. The AI itself, the algorithm, it's just code, it's neutral. But how you decide to use it, how it's governed and deployed, that is a direct reflection of a political philosophy. A centralized system can coordinate and deploy AI on a national scale that a more fragmented, decentralized system just can't dream of.
And here's another key difference. In the West, all the headlines are dominated by generative AI, tools that are changing how we create content. But a huge part of China's focus is on industrial AI. This is the stuff that's way less flashy, but it's deeply transformative. We're talking about automating ports, optimizing global supply chains, building smart factories. So if generative AI is changing culture, industrial AI is quietly changing the fundamental way a nation produces everything.
And you guessed it, this strategy does not stop at their borders. By exporting things like smart city technology and digital infrastructure to other countries, China extends its influence. Think about it. When a country adopts these systems, they become part of a technological ecosystem that's built on and aligned with Beijing's standards. Digital infrastructure creates long-term technological and political alignment. AI becomes a really powerful tool of foreign policy.
So when you put all of these pieces together, you start to realize something pretty profound. This isn't really just about who has the best tech. This is the ultimate competition. It's a fundamental clash of governance models.
This table just breaks it down so clearly. On one side, you have the decentralized Western model. It's all about entrepreneurs trying a million different things. Its greatest strength? It's incredibly innovative and creative. But its weakness is that it can be kind of chaotic and lack a single unified direction. On the other side, you have the centralized Chinese model, driven by top-down coordinated planning. Its strength is that it can deploy new tech at an absolutely breathtaking speed and scale. The risk, though? It could become too rigid, too slow to pivot when things change.
And this, right here, might be the single most underestimated advantage of China's model: simple patience. Where Western markets are screaming for results this quarter, China's entire strategy is framed in 5-year plans and decades-spanning goals. That kind of long-term capital and state-backed research creates a stability that market-driven systems really struggle to match. That difference in the time horizon, that might be the biggest variable in this whole competition.
So here's the bottom line. The AI revolution isn't just about rewriting some software or creating a few cool new apps. At its absolute deepest level, what's happening right now is a fundamental redrawing of the geopolitical power maps for the entire 21st century.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Which of these two very different models is going to scale more effectively in the long run? Is it going to be the fast, messy, creative chaos of decentralized innovation? Or will the immense power of a coordinated, patient national strategy win out in the end? The truth is, the answer to that question is being written as we speak, in the chip fabs, in the university classrooms, and in the very digital infrastructure of our world.